shouldn't have listened.
They told me the West Wing was decommissioned. They lied. Or maybe they just didn't check. It was supposed to be simple. One night, midnight to 6. A temp shift covering a nurse who'd called out sick. Ridgeway Memorial Hospital. 40 years of paint peeling off linoleum walls and an HVAC system that never stopped coughing. Most of the upper floors had been closed since 2019, converted into storage for whatever the new wing didn't want. But budget's budget. You keep the lights running, you keep the monitors on, even if the rooms are full of nothing. I clocked in at 11:57 p.m. The night supervisor handed me a clipboard and said, "Don't wander off." He didn't smile. The keycard reader blinked red before it turned green. Wing C, critical storage. The sign beneath it still read Decommissioned 2019, but when the lock clicked, a breeze of cold chemical air brushed my face, too fresh to be abandoned. Hospitals don't die all at once. They fade like patients do, slowly. Inside the corridor was a tunnel of frosted glass and machine shadows. One light at the end still pulsed green. A heart monitor, alive when everything else had flatlined. The smell was a blend of dust, antiseptic, and old rain. No humans, no motion. Just machines pretending to breathe. Room 317. The only door ajar. The monitor inside beat a slow 60 BPM. Regular, steady, human. But the leads hung free over an empty bed. No patient, no chart, nothing. Testing? I set it to the room like it might answer. The green line blinked once, then twice. Then the next room lit up, then the next. One by one down the corridor, a chain of monitors waking from a dream, all beating the same pulse, 60 BPM. Identical. Perfect. Impossible. Hospitals teach you to normalize the unexplainable. A door shuts by itself? Draft. Monitor blips? Residual power. It's easier than admitting something's watching from the gaps in procedure. I moved to the nurse's station. A dust-covered computer sat half awake, the screen faintly glowing. When I jiggled the mouse, it came to life without a login. A window blinked open by itself. Vitals monitor. Active connections, 12. 12 beds. 12 heartbeats. But only one column showed green. Bed 317A. L.R. Hale. My name. Okay, that's cute. I closed the program. It reopened. Unplugged the tower. Still on. A low hum rolled through the vents, rhythmic like breath through lungs. I turned back toward room 317. The monitor flatlined. The sound pinned me in place. Beneath the tone, another layer. A voice thin as radio static whispered, "Stay with me." My flashlight trembled. I did what any rational person would. I stepped closer. The air dropped 10 degrees. I could see my breath rise like steam from something recently dead. The IV stand beside the bed tilted slightly, as if someone had just brushed it. No one was there. Only a dent in the sheet, a body shape impression facing the door. I spun. Nothing. All other doors closed. All other doors closed. Except the nurse's station printer had started spitting out paper. One sheet. White. Fresh. Still warm to the touch. Patient intake. L.R. Hale. Admit time. 3:11 a.m. Status. Pending evaluation. I checked my watch. 3:11. Exactly. The flatlines spread down the corridor like falling dominoes. One after another, every monitor screamed its steady death. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it wasn't sound anymore. It was pressure. The kind that fills your teeth. The kind that belongs to rooms that remember. Then all 12 tones cut out at once. Silence so heavy you could hear your own pulse failing to keep up. From the station computer, the screen flared white. A message typed itself line by line. Code blue, 317A. Then beneath it, resuscitate. I stepped back. The bed rails rose on their own. The monitor blipped green again, syncing with a new heartbeat. Not 60. Mine. Exactly mine. I lifted my hand and the graph spiked with me. Every blink of my pulse visible on the screen. I stopped breathing and the line went flat. When I gasped, it returned, obedient as a pet. Enough, I whispered. Enough, please. The computer dinged. Another printout. Same form, same timestamp. Only the final line had changed. Status, admitted. The building groaned, long and low, like a breath drawn through rusted lungs. I staggered backward until my shoulders hit the wall. The hall looked longer than before, stretched, like the perspective had given up on staying real. The lights pulsed with the heartbeat from room 317. My heartbeat. I snapped off my badge, pressed it to the scanner. The door didn't open. The light stayed red. The card reader beeped twice and displayed, "Access denied. Admitted patient." That's when I heard it again. My own voice from room 317, muffled, as if through oxygen mask plastic. "Stay with me." I peeked around the corner. The bed was occupied, a shape under the sheet, still human. On the monitor, the pulse held steady at 60. But on the glass of the screen, my reflection smiled a half-second before I did. I did the one thing I could think to do: run. Past the station, past the doors, slamming the keycard until it finally blinked green. The hall beyond was wrong. Walls in different colors, layout shifted. A sign read, "West Wing, cardiac monitoring," like nothing had ever closed. Behind me, the flatline tone rose again, but this time it followed me, mobile, like breathing inside the walls. I made it to the stairwell. The emergency door stuck for a heartbeat, then gave. When I turned to look back, the corridor was dark, every light off, every sound gone, except for the printer. Another sheet spooled out onto the tile. I walked back just far enough to read it in the glow of my flashlight. Discharge summary, L.R. Hale. Time of death, 03:11 a.m. I looked at my watch. Still 03:11. The second hand wasn't moving. Respire. Monitors never stop once they find a pulse. And when I turned off my flashlight, the dark glowed green. Chapter 20. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I stood in the stairwell for so long that the metal handrail took the shape of my grip. When I finally stepped back onto the active floors, the living part of Ridgeway washed over me. Cartwheels, coffee breath, a cough in an exam room, an orderly laughing too loud at nothing. Normal felt like a disguise that didn't fit. Security sits behind glass like a confession booth. The night supervisor, same man who handed me the clipboard, looked up from a screen and squinted like he recognized a problem he'd already decided to ignore. "You're back early?" he said. "I never left," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. "I need to see the cameras for Wing C." He glanced at my badge. "Wing C is decommissioned. Then it won't take long." He let me through. The security room was a cold aquarium of monitors, a 4x4 grid of the hospital's private eyes, each with a red timecode burning in the corner. A coffee mug with lipstick on it had congealed into the texture of grief. On the center screen, the West Wing hallway stared back, sterile, empty, bluish. No glow, no alarms. Just the still patience of a place that refuses to show you what it did with you. "Roll it back to 0250, I said. He scrubbed the timeline. There I was at 11:57, swiping into C. There I was at 02:59, walking past the nurse's station, flashlight down, posture careful. At 03:11, three strange things happened at once. Every room monitor in the feed flickered, but not to life, to static. Nurse's station printer kicked on. Froze. On the camera, I was in room 317's doorway, facing the bed. I didn't move. Not a sway. Not a breath in my chest that the pixel grain could track. The supervisor frowned and pinched in to zoom. My face looked carved. My mouth wasn't open. My eyes weren't blinking. "Maybe you were steady," he said, half hopeful. "Play the audio," I said. "We don't pipe room audio in the decom. Play the audio." He toggled the channel I hadn't seen. A small dot in the corner of the feed, unlabeled, that bloomed its own waveform when he clicked it. Under the static, beneath the air conditioning and the tiny, lonely noises buildings make when they're trying not to be noticed, a tone rose. Then my voice, soft, wearing my mouth without moving it. "Stay with me." The supervisor leaned and squinted at me in the screen, then at me in the room. "Your lips didn't move." "I know." He backed up, scrubbing the timeline. 03:10:50, 03:10:30. The hallway feed stayed boring. The monitors in each room were dark rectangles with little green eyes. The printer worked. My body in the doorway didn't. He switched to another camera, the nurse's station desktop capture, a screen recording for IT audits. It showed the vitals program I'd tried to close. It showed the system refused to die when I pulled the power. The cursor moved on its own, highlighting Bed 317A, LR Hale, while the timecode ticked. And then, as if the hospital decided to do me a kindness and a cruelty at once, a new window appeared on the desktop. Live telemetry. It looked like the cardiology feeds from the main wing, only the header said, "Reset. Active." A trace snapped into place. It mirrored a pulse that wasn't coming from any lead, wasn't attached to any chest. The supervisor's brows knit. What the hell is that connected to? I put 2 fingers to my neck. I didn't dare say it out loud. The on-screen trace matched my pulse. When I held my breath, it went flat, then normalizes as I exhale. When I tapped the table with my thumb, 1, 2, 3, the telemetry spiked in the same 1, 2, 3 beat with a half-second lag, like it listened and then performed. The supervisor's eyes darted between me and the waveform. "We're not connected to you." "Then what is?" I asked. He switched to stairwell cam, the one I'd fled into. It showed me smacking my badge on the emergency door, shoulder-checking the crash bar. Then it showed me stop, turn toward the hallway, and listen. I remember none of that. I remember running until the air hurt. In the room with us, the speakers spilled softer audio, the printer spitting a page, the faint rhythm of 12 beats aligning. And then, as the time code ticked, 3:11:59, 3:12:00, the date overlay didn't increment to the next minute. It looped back to 3:11:00 and kept going, like the hospital rewound a single minute to use again. The supervisor swore under his breath. "Glitch. Watch the second hand," I said. The second hand in the overlay slid to 59, hesitated, and instead of rolling to 00, it jittered, a micro-seizure, then jumped backward a beat. The telemetry trace kept humming anyway. "Okay," he said, voice careful. "Okay." He opened a different panel, power logs. Every wing's draw listed in clean lines with timestamps. At 3:11, Wing C took a sip of current from cardiology, a hand reaching through a wall for the warmest outlet. "Who allowed that junction?" he muttered. "We killed the breakers to C years ago." He dragged the cursor, highlighting 3:11 in yellow. The software comment bubble popped up. "Exception. Life safety override." No initials. No password. "Life safety for what?" I asked. "For whoever's on the monitor," he said. Then he remembered the name. "For you." 2. He toggled printer logs. 1 job at 3:11. Form, patient intake. Name, L.R. Hale. Source, Nurse Station C. Initiator, System. And then, right under it, time-stamped in the same minute, discharge summary. Time of death, 3:11 a.m. "Look," I said, "I have a pulse." He didn't answer. He was staring at a different feed, lobby cam. At 3:12, the automatic doors opened and no one walked in. Cold fog curled in anyway. The guard at the front desk rubbed his arms and looked toward the hall like he felt a visitor. The telemetry trace in our room rose a fraction, as if the building's heart responded to a draft. He closed his eyes and rubbed his temple. "I need to go up there." "I'm coming." "No." He pointed to a vinyl visitor chair against the wall like he was telling a kid to sit out the last inning. "You stay. It's my job to get eyes on a fault. If you're on those monitors, I don't know what to do if you..." He stopped. "Just don't go back down there." He left. I watched him on the Wing C feed as a small figure with a flashlight that ate only a small circle of dark at a time. He swiped into the decommissioned corridor. The camera tried to find him and failed. The exposure breathed. For a few seconds, the feed turned to gray soup. Then it cleared, and he stood at the nurse's station, hand on the printer. The top tray was empty. He checked the trash. Nothing. He moved to room 317 and stopped in the doorway the way I had. He tilted his head, listening. The audio channel picked him up breathing, steady. He stepped in. The monitor in the shot, unplugged from the wall, power cord coiled neatly around its base, blinked green. Single. The waveform in the telemetry window in our room shivered, like something excited to be seen. "Are you seeing this?" I asked the empty chair. "I am," answered a voice that wasn't in the room. It came from the intercom on the wall, the one that usually barks visiting hours. It wasn't the supervisor. It was me. Or it was how the corridors heard me. "Stay with me." I stood. The telemetry jumped. I sat. The telemetry calmed. The intercom crackled again. "We can watch you anywhere," it said. My cadence with the hospital's patient breath under it. "We can keep you admitted." "Who is we?" I asked, and I hated the way the question implied I might accept the answer. No reply. Only the millisecond delays of electricity deciding whether to obey physics or memory. The supervisor's flashlight washed across a plexiglass chart holder mounted in 317. He slid a folder out and held it to the camera without meaning to. "UR intake, Wing C." The patient name block had been typed and erased so many times that the paper looked abraded. Under the last smear of liquid paper, a pressure ghost of the letters HALE bled through. He spoke, not into his radio, but to the room. "If you're in here, I need you to..." Manifest is the wrong word. He laughed once, too quiet to be a joke. "I need you to stop using my equipment to make your point." The hallway lights behind him flicked, not off, but to a tone I recognized, from the flatlines. He turned, a small human response to a thing that pretends to be wind, and his flashlight hit the defibrillator on its cart by the door. The paddles were clipped in their holsters. The battery wasn't even installed. Still, the machine charged. The green "ready" indicator lit up on a device without power. In the telemetry window, the trace climbed with the charge. My heart thudded in my neck. The machine announced in a voice that came from nowhere and everywhere. "Clear." The supervisor jumped back. "Nope!" He unplugged the defib from the wall for the second time, despite it already being unplugged. It beeped an offended little beep and went quiet. He blew out a breath. "Copy that. You win." He backed into the hallway and the camera outside caught something else. Me. Or the shape of me, reflected in the polished glass behind him, standing where the frame said I wasn't. The reflection turned its head a fraction before he did, the way a mirror sometimes anticipates the person it belongs to. I put my hand to my mouth. "That's not you," said the voice on the intercom with me. Half a second late, exactly half. The supervisor returned. He didn't sit. He stood in the doorway of the security room and looked at me the way you look at an X-ray with something in it you don't recognize. "You're not allowed in C again," he said. "I believe you," I said. "I'm not going back." He nodded like he didn't believe me. "We need to file a report." "About what?" I held up my hands. "A dead wing monitoring a live nurse who isn't dead?" He looked at the screens. He looked at me. Then he did something that made me like him for the first time. He unplugged the bank of monitors feeding Wing C. The screens went black. The room felt lighter. I felt lighter. For exactly 3 seconds. Then the screens came back on one by one, as if the hospital had a second, secret spine. I said, he didn't swear, he didn't dramatize, he just reached for a clipboard and wrote, IT anomaly, Wing C, monitors self-powered. Then he added a line lower, do not send temp staff. He looked at me. Go home. I don't want to be alone. Then sit in an occupied unit until daylight and pretend to chart, he said gently. But don't talk to the walls when they talk first. They hate being acknowledged. He walked me to cardiac monitoring where 3 real patients slept beneath the graphed truths of their blood. The telemetry on their screens whispered in gentle slopes. The nurses there nodded at me like I was part of the furniture. I sat at a terminal near the door and pretended to log supplies. The system prompted for a password. I typed mine. It denied me. I typed the supervisor's. I'd seen him log in 100 times. Denied. I reached into my pocket for my badge and felt paper instead. The discharge summary I thought I'd dropped in the stairwell. I unfolded it. The time of death still read 3:11 a.m. The signature line at the bottom, once blank, now bore a name in a careful hand. L.R. Hale, R.N. Me, signing myself out. The telemetry on patient 2 blipped in a stutter. 1, 2, 3, like a heart imitating a knock. The nurse at that bed glanced up, frowned, adjusted a lead. The stutter stopped. Across the room, the wall intercom clicked and breathed as if the building had leaned in to listen for a story. I put the paper back in my pocket. I tried to slow my breath. I let the room's real rhythms carry me. But somewhere under it, I still heard the flatline tone. Not loud, not even audible. Just a pressure halo around the hour 3:11, like a clock the hospital kept for me. When my shift ended, the day supervisor arrived with sunlight stuck to her shoes. She said lightly, "How was the quiet wing?" I said, "It wasn't." She laughed like I'd told a joke at a funeral. "They're sending facilities to unplug all those old monitors this morning." "Good," I said. At 10:40 a.m., I was home, face down on the couch, eyes open, when my phone buzzed. A text from the night supervisor. "Facilities report Ward C, no devices connected. All monitors unplugged years ago." A second message followed, a photo. The nurse's station in Wing C, daytime, bright, innocent. Every monitor off, every power cord coiled, the printer tray empty. The caption, "All quiet." My phone hummed again before I could answer. A second photo, same station, same angle, except on the desk a single printout had appeared between shots like a card in a magician's hand. The top line read, "Patient intake, L.R. Hale." Timestamp, 3:11 a.m., printed in morning light. The supervisor added, "We were standing there." I called him. He didn't pick up. The call rolled to, and under it my own voice whispered out of my speaker, "Stay with me." I dropped the phone. It kept breathing in my pocket, warm like a living thing. That night, when I closed my eyes, I saw the telemetry trace draw my pulse even when I held my breath. It felt like being watched from the other side of glass by a version of me that had already agreed to stay. I set an alarm for 3:10 and lay on my side, staring at the dark, listening for a printer that wasn't in my apartment. At 3:11, the apartment didn't change. The city didn't pause. But a small green glow edged the window frame, a reflection from nowhere, and lined itself up with the bead in my neck. I whispered the only discharge instruction that mattered, to myself, to the room, to the wing that wrote my name before I did. If the monitor finds your heartbeat, don't look at the screen. The refrigerator compressor clicked on. It matched me for a few breaths, then I stopped matching it. The distant. I told myself I wouldn't go back. Hospitals teach a kind of superstition. Don't say a patient is stable, don't tempt the code pager. Don't walk past an empty bed that learned your name. I made it 3 nights. On the 4th, the text arrived at 3:08 a.m. No caller ID, no thread history, just a single line. Wing C, life safety override. Under it, a photo I didn't want, taken from the nurse's station desktop. Live telemetry, remote, active. The trace looked like my pulse when I'm trying not to cry. I didn't answer. I put the phone face down and listened to my apartment breathe. The refrigerator compressor kicked on. The pitch matched my chest. At 3:11, the printer sound I'd been dreading floated in from the hall. There is no printer in my building. I dressed, scrubs, badge, the discharge paper in my pocket like a coin you rub when you lie. When I reached the curb, the city felt sleep-paralyzed. Cars present, sound missing. Ridgeway rose across the street with its windows dark and its crown light blinking like a tired eye. Security should have stopped me. The desk sat empty. A visitor sticker roll leaned at an angle like it had tried to fall and changed its mind. The camera above the entrance followed me without the red LED lit. The elevator didn't need my badge. It knew me. It always does when you return to a place you tried to leave. I pressed nothing. The cab moved anyway. Not up, not down, aside. The numbers in the panel flickered, then settled on a time instead of a floor. 3:11. The doors opened to Wing C. The hallway wore its dust like a bruise. Lights hummed at the same frequency as fear. The rooms on both sides waited with their mouths ajar. Don't, I whispered to myself. Don't go to 317. I went. The bed was made, the rails down as if the room had prepared an ordinary morning. The monitor at the headboard was unplugged, cord looped neat. It woke anyway. Heart rate, 60 BPM. Name, L.R. Hale. The L blinked like a cursor. Stop it, I said, to the room or to myself. Stop. The monitor obeyed. Then the entire corridor answered with a single soft flat line that felt like a pressure change more than a tone. I stood at the nurse's station to steady my hands. The desktop recorder had left itself open like a diary. Vitals monitor, active. Connections, 12. Every bed grayed out except 317A. The live telemetry window popped up on its own. The trace mirrored my pulse with that familiar half-second lag, like the building loved to keep me almost with myself. Okay, I said. You win. The intercom answered with my own cadence. Stay with me. I pulled the printer tray. Empty. I checked the trash. Empty too. I told the room I wouldn't read what it wanted to print. It printed anyway. Patient intake, L.R. Hale. Admit time, 3:11 a.m. Status, observation. A second page followed without a motor sound, as if the paper appeared fully formed. Observation note 1. Monitor captures external rhythm from remote patient. Recommend proximity to source for accurate charting. Observation Note 2. Patient denies admission. My throat clicked. No, I said to the empty wing. I accept discharge. The station display changed headings to discharge summary by itself. The time of death field blinked, then scrolled 311 across in perfect digital block letters and froze there like a threat. Eddie? I called before I remembered I hadn't seen him since the audit. Supervisor, can you hear me? The intercom breathed. A voice that was not his and not mine said from the stitched seams of the ceiling, "We don't say names down here." I left the station and walked farther than I'd ever gone, past 320, 322, past a utility alcove that shouldn't exist. It had no number, just a gurney leaning into silence, and a defibrillator on a cart like the one I'd seen charge without power. The paddles were still clipped. The battery slot was still empty. It charged. "Clear," the building said in a voice made of its vents and wiring and every call an overhead speaker had ever made. The ready light glowed green. "Enough," I said louder. "I said enough!" The charge drained like a sigh. At the end of the corridor, between two doors that never open, there is a third that pretends to be a wall. I hadn't noticed it before because it had learned me already. It knew to wait for the moment I'd stop pretending too. A seam, thin as a paper cut, the color of primer. Behind it, the quiet weight of decisions. I pressed my palm to it. The wall felt warm. I felt the building's pulse, not beats but intervals. A rhythm like breath held between someone counting and someone agreeing to be counted. I pushed. The seam gave a half inch. Not more, never more. Green monitor light licked the edges of the gap. In that other air, I smelled isopropyl and wet paper and the metallic breath of a printer ribbon that refuses to die. From inside the gap, my voice spoke in the present tense like a nurse reading a chart at the bedside. L.R. Hale, female, admitted at 311 for observation following an event in Wing C. Stable in denial. I took my hand away. The seam closed with a sound that wasn't a sound, more like silence deciding where it belongs. Behind me, room 317 sighed. The bedsheet had a dent now. A shape turned toward the door. The monitor still showed 60 BPM, but the line was more interested, a little proud. It had company. "Where did you put me?" I asked. The wing answered by dimming the lights to the color of old film. The screen at the nurse's station ticked once. The power logs window surfaced without my touch. Wing C, cardiology, life safety borrow, 0311. Then, a notation, telemetry stabilized by proximity. Proximity to what? To me. To versions of me. Footsteps approach, slow, rubber soles, stopping just behind. I didn't turn. You learn this in horror and in hospitals. The fastest way to lose a patient or yourself is to turn toward the wrong voice. "Don't," I whispered. "If you smile first, I won't move." Whoever stood just behind my left shoulder smiled. I felt it like a temperature change. They did not move. "So?" I asked the glass of the station screen. "So," my own cadence breathed back from the intercom. "Admit or discharge." "That simple?" "Yes." "Admission is mercy. Discharge is noise." I thought about the audit, the looped minute, the way reality hiccuped for 0311 and dragged me back. Admission meant the wing would own my minute forever. Discharge meant I'd keep walking around the city with an empty bed printing my name every night. What happens if I choose neither? The printer answered with a page that wasn't a form, just a list of names in faded dot matrix letters. Names upon names, dates. One column shaded faintly green with a cursor blinked. Admitted. The column next to it, discharged. Half the names had no marks at all. Those? I asked. We kept them in observation, the intercom said, almost fond. They learned to breathe with us. I slid the list back into the tray. The paper felt warmer than it should. I walked to 317 and raised the rails like I was starting a normal night. I adjusted a pillow for no one. My hands knew what to do. Muscle memory is its own kind of haunting. The monitor's baseline dipped, then steadied as if grateful for attention. The live telemetry window on the station trailed me like a pet on an invisible leash. Okay, I said quietly, to the room, to the seam, to the part of me that had already lain down here in the dark. I'll make you a deal. We don't bargain, the wing said through the air conditioner. You do, I said softer. You borrowed power. You borrowed names. Bargaining is just borrowing clarity. Silence has body here. It shifted. You can keep my minute, I said. Keep 0311. Chart me then. Print me then. But the rest of the hour belongs to me. The flat line under the walls receded like a tide. The station clock hiccuped once, 0311:59, 0312:0, and kept going. The second hand climbed the glass like a tiny person who had finally found friction. Observation, the intercom breathed. Observation, I agreed. Not admitted. Not discharged, the wing said, a smile I could hear. The bed dent smoothed. The monitor stayed lit. The name field fogged, then resolved not to say anything at all. HR 60. In the station display, the remote active tag blinked off. The telemetry window minimized itself. A different window floated up. Nurse notes, draft. The cursor waited. I typed, quiet wing, monitor active without power. Subject stable in denial. Observation continues. I signed my name and did not press save. The system saved anyway. Autosave, 3:11 a.m. Break, 2.5 seconds. When I left, the elevator arrived without a call. It smelled like rain and toner. I stood inside and faced the mirror and refused to be the first one to move. She, the version who smiles first, tilted her head almost imperceptibly, then gave up. We exhaled at the same time. For once, the lag didn't come. The lobby looked real again. Weak coffee, overwatered plants, a day shift tech yawning into a sleeve. The security desk had a new face, no lipstick on the mug, no Eddie. I thought I might ask where he'd gone, then didn't. Some names you don't say down there, some names you don't say up here either. Outside, the city stitched its sounds back together. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. A bus sighed and kneeled. A man coughed into his phone and apologized to a person who couldn't hear the wing under him breathing. I went home. I taped the discharge paper to the inside of my closet door and the intake paper behind it, back to back. 2 thin truths. I set my alarm for 3:10 and learned to sleep in segments, edges rounded. The printer never came into my apartment again, but sometimes, without the sound, a warm sheet of air passes my face at 3:11, like a page moving in a tray. Sometimes the fridge hum finds my pulse and follows it until I break the rhythm. Sometimes I stand in the bathroom and stare at my reflection until one of us blinks first. And then I turn out the light. When people ask why I don't take nights anymore, I say the honest thing that doesn't explain. It's too quiet. On my last day at Ridgeway, I walked the active floors with a goodbye I didn't speak. In the bright new wing, monitors sang the right songs, peaks and valleys with well-behaved bass lines. I stood in a doorway where a patient slept with a family member's hand on theirs. The green line rose to a private rhythm I had no right to hear. I smiled because it wasn't mine. At the end of the shift, I slipped downstairs one last time. Not to go in. To stand at the locked door and count to 60, the number of the wing's favorite heart. The keycard reader glowed red. I pressed nothing. On the other side of the door, the intercom clicked on with a breath I knew, and my own cadence said, "Observation continues." "I know," I said to the door. "Me too." I put my palm against the metal, cool now, and waited for the pull that says admit. It didn't come. The building had learned our deal. Or I had. I left by the side exit. The sky had that pre-dawn bruise. I walked home with my hands open, ungloved, counting steps, counting breaths, refusing to let them line up too perfectly. At 03:11, the wind moved across the river and the city's lights vibrated. Not visibly, just enough that your chest thinks you felt it. The world didn't pause, but I did. I waited. I listened. No printer, only the quiet. The wing and I, breathing in observation.